Hello to everybody watching on YouTube, on LinkedIn, listening back on podcast. As you can see, I'm joined by Victor Gamov. Victor, how are you?
Hey Joe, hello LinkedIn, hello Internet. I don't see you everyone. Like I don't see the chat, but like hopefully there would be hundreds and thousands of listeners of this awesome podcast.
Yeah, that's optimistic, but I like it.
Yep, it's always good to be
But
optimistic indeed.
good to see you. You're joining us. Absolutely. Where is it you're joining us from, Victor?
I'm joining you from Greater New York area and Northern New Jersey to be more specific. I just live 25 minutes outside of Manhattan on the over the Hudson River, so East Coast.
Brilliant. How long have you been there for now? I didn't ask you before.
Yeah, it's been a while. I live there over 12 or 13 years now.
12 or 13 years. Okay, so that's home for you now, yeah?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's home now.
Excellent. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of DevOps for Everyone. Very excited today to talk to Victor, one of the guys over at Kong in the US, and shout out to Taryn as well for helping put this together. Really appreciate that. So, what we'll do, Victor, we'll get into a few questions. I've got some questions that I've prepared. I know you're going to talk about certain things around Kong, on the networking side, how it fits into Ingress, ultimately how to supercharge Kubernetes Ingress. But before we get into that, would you like to give a kind of a brief overview of yourself and the business?
Yeah, thanks for this. So I work as a principal developer advocate at Kong, and I get to hang out with awesome developers, community, with engineers, and the people who involved in the business in general. So I came to this developer relations world from consultancy background. So I've been exposed to, you know, actual implementations of the things and different installations of different systems. And I've been in commercial open source companies for over, I guess, 9 years by this point. What does mean commercial open source company? It's companies who build successful business on top, like I like to say, it's successful business on top of the open source technologies, and open source technologies also continue to be thriving element of this business. It's kind of like a synergy. Can I say this? Like, okay, so you can cross this off from the business BS bingo. Yes, I said the synergy, so we can say we're promoting synergy in this podcast.
Do you know, I always find the role of dev advocate a very interesting one because it's kind of like a fairly new role in the world, right? Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't really get a dev advocate like 20 years ago, and you can come from very different backgrounds. So, how would you define the role of a developer advocate?
This is very often asked question about this, and I should better have a kind of like a elevator pitch, but I would say it's a fun from the very beginning, but also it's very difficult because you need to stay on top of the things, and like having multiple things in your hand, like it, most of the times. Plus, it's a very great mix of technical skills and communication skills and people skills. You also need to have ability to communicate your thoughts clearly. Hopefully, I'm communicating my. But we'll see how it goes on today's episode. And also, it requires the knowledge not only in technology but in general in overall like a landscape in cloud, in open source, different languages, and also big part of it is actually communicating this not only externally but also internally. Many people sees advocacy as a kind of like external process. Oh, we're going to use this as a kind of like a smart lead gen in our company. So I see advocacy as a two-way street. It's not only I'm going and promoting stuff, but also I'm collecting some of the feedback and bringing this back feedback to product teams so we can improve whatever we're doing, whatever we are building, and helping people be more successful. Biggest difference for me when I transitioned from kind of the consultancy side of the business into more customer relations and developer relations is relations part. Because in consultancy, you kind of like, oh, you hired to do the thing. Here's the thing. Get my paycheck. Thank you so much, and I'm out of the door. But when we're building a successful company around the technologies, we want to have healthy relationship with our customers. So that's why it's not anymore like give me all the answers, but rather than okay, so let me help you with the things that currently available, but I'm getting feedback from you and helping you to improve this product, whatever you're using in future.
Yeah, I guess it's really interesting as well, because when you think about a company, or when you think open source, right? When you think about open source communities, you kind of need someone that's bridging the gap between, okay, this is what the community is saying, this is the feedback, and then you feed that back to the product development teams, the software teams. So you need that bridge between not just customers and the business, but community and the business. So you're playing that role as well, I guess.
Right, exactly. And in many cases, it depends on the level of maturity of the company and the level of maybe it's also the size of the company. It also matters. Sometimes communicating with internal stakeholders, leadership, to explain them and so they understand why advocacy is different from whatever we're doing, like why it's not just simple lead gen or whatnot.
Yeah.
That's also bigger part of the things that developer relations specialist needs to do and needs to know how to do it well, because convincing that organization requires this type of role, it is kind of like one of the things that also required to know. One of the biggest influences in my career and the things that I learned from the book, it was actually a book named A Business Value of Developer Relations by Mary Trengwell. This book talks like a lot about this type of stuff. If you want to pick up this type of profession, this is the getting started guide for you, so you can understand like if you want to do this at all.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So moving on to some of the questions that I really wanted to ask you. So when you agreed to come on, I was really happy, and I thought to myself, there's a few killer questions that I've got. But in terms of you personally, you've been with the business just under a year, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, around, I joined the Kong end of May.
End of May.
2021. Yep.
Okay, so just under a year. So what I wanted to know from you, Victor, would be what are some of the most notable changes that you've seen at Kong in your time at the business?
So one of the biggest changes and the biggest lines of growth that we see, that I've seen like over this time, is definitely cloud and adoption of the cloud products. We iterating on our cloud product. So first of all, let me just like before I go into this route, let me explain like what we actually do and like why it is important for us. So essentially, Kong is a commercial open source company. We build a middleware, if you want to be in like a plain English, the software that helps developers, helps operations people to run their software more efficiently. And I've been in the middleware business for a while. Like I've been in systems that were closely to your data. I was in the systems that were integration side of things, and now I am on the systems that more closely to the edge and closely to the applications that will be exposed. And one of the premier, the flagship product of Kong is Kong Gateway. It is a system that sits in your data centers and becomes some sort of like a doorman to services that your company provides. It provides the capabilities that allow you to route different like URL from the service that your users hitting to different systems that running inside your application. That's like in a simple form, kind of like a proxy server. But on top of it, we can provide different things. Being a man on the wheel, we can do like security very efficiently. We can do user authorization and notification things. We can help with some of the reliability of connectivity. We have different ways how you can enable caching for improving the response time. We have different things that how to help to push back from the if there is a lot of requests for particular route for particular service. And we're building a lot of things around those technologies to help people to operate more complex applications using this stuff. On data center side of things, like when you building your application internally, there might be multiple different teams who building this, and this in the microservices world, those systems can be even written on different languages. So we also provide a system that allows this integration easily. It's the service mesh. That's another the open source product that Conk is actively contributing, and we're also providing some of the like enterprise feature for those products. With the growth of complexity around those use cases, when you have applications that run in a decentralized manner, you need to have a better control. So you want to have a control over all these things. You need to understand like what kind of services exposed to what kind of plugins available, and what kind of metrics you can get. So we implemented and providing as a service the system that allows to control all these things. It's basically managed control plane for all these your distributed applications. And to return to your initial question, like what was the biggest growth? The biggest growth was definitely open source, the open source side of things, and the adoption of these technologies that we built. And another thing that we see as a bigger growth is the growth of the cloud. Having centralized control plane for your decentralized app, it's convenient. It's great, and you don't need to. We also like simplify the way how the people dealing with licensing and all this kind of stuff. So you can, if you're using cloud, just like you have everything. You can use like all the plugins, enterprise or free or whatnot. You can like implement different, CI/CD type of style configuration management for your apps. Just simply interacting with the service, and the service will take care of distributing this configuration across multiple data planes.
So Kong runs on multi-cloud.
So currently we use Amazon as our, where we run our control plane. But yeah, we're planning to, we can integrate with, any environment that you have. But yeah, in future we're planning to run this in, more closely to applications. Like if your application runs in GCP, it makes sense for us to run this control plane in GCP.
Yeah. I think Amazon is probably, like a de facto go-to for for a lot of businesses. One, because there's so many services within AWS, it's unbelievable. So that must mean that there's so many more customers to go after, because they're all using different parts of AWS, right? So that would make sense.
Yeah. We use AWS right now as our basic platform, like where we run like our everything. But we also trying to be cloud agnostic. That allows us to, like, to be frank, you can run Kong anywhere. We don't have like any like special sauce to make it Kong run better in Amazon or like running this better on Azure or whatnot.
There's no exclusive breaking news here today.
Yeah, no, we like to meet our customers where they are. So all the things that I just talk about those available also as a on a self-managed fashion. So you can do your hosted installation, and many things will be also available, like distributed control plane, some of the things for API management, like you developing some business, say you selling, I don't know, like you have a service that will do image recognition, and you also need to package the service as an API as a service, for example. We also have a products that will cover you from for building these developer portals with documentation, with some of the code snippets, examples where the people can join and get all these endpoints described and all these kind of things. So that's the thing that the differentiate probably Kong from anything else, is that like we have like all full API management lifecycle and much more, with the service mesh and some other tools that I didn't even mention. So we have a developer tools that people can use to develop those services.
So there might be somebody watching now live, or there might be somebody listening back on Spotify who could be a potential customer further down the line. Is your target audience enterprise, or is it mid-level?
It doesn't matter. It's there's no one size fits all. I like to kind of like approach this more like t-shirt size, right? So there are some medium use cases, there's some small use cases, there are some extra large and extra large use cases, and it really doesn't matter. It's the level of complexity that Kong can handle. It's very vast. So you can have like very simple use cases where we can use the Kong as just simple proxy server, or like you running your application in Kubernetes and you want to simply expose this to outside world. So you just use the Kong Ingress to get access to the system, and you have a one app, and it's totally fine. As you grow, as you implement more services or you scale your services in the back end, you can start thinking about, okay, so now my services is growing. What kind of challenges I do have there? So since it's a distributed system between my services, they need to communicate. Should I bake the logic that will provide resilience, resilience is probably right way to say this, resilience of the services, and secure communication between services. Maybe one service will be developed by another team that has more strict requirements on security, and all these kind of things can be solved with the service mesh. But outside world still, will be hitting your Kong gateway, and all this information will continue to flow in to the system. So it you can start small and grow your use cases. Like I do have a demo that I sometimes show. Like one is like a simple service that depends on the startup parameters. It can be generating quotes from Back to Future, or another startup parameter will say, okay, it's going to be facts about Chuck Norris, where I kind of like demonstrated what kind of things can be done with the gateway. But also I have like a bigger demo where I have like 6 or 7 services communicating to each other just to simply display. It's kind of like an online shop that is showing what you have there. That explains that like these technologies can work in different size of use cases.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's good they don't cater to one specific customer, one specific size. The next question I had was more about the business as well, and the kind of success about the business, because anybody in this world, in the cloud native world or the open source world, sees Kong on LinkedIn, sees Kong on Twitter, and just looks great from the outside. And I actually saw a post on LinkedIn where it said, I think in March you had a sales or some kind of a kickoff meeting in March, maybe because it was the start of the financial year in April. And the post was all about having a record year at Kong. Everybody was celebrating a record year at Kong. So what was that record year? Can you tell us about that? What did that involve?
Yeah, of course. Without going into details and numbers and all this kind of like the numbers that
All the
Conk
private
right now
stuff, yeah.
is yeah, Conk right now is a private company, so those numbers are not available to outside world. But from perspective of net new logos, not net new companies who start using Conk, from perspective of how many people Conk hire, so we just again we're hiring. If you're interested in this in this type of business, well, it's good time to join. It's good time to join and start building something together. It was the record year on revenue. It's was record year, so we first time we assumed very significant profit from Kong Mesh, which was the the most fresh product that was the inception of the mesh happened like 2 years ago. And now we already have a very significant part of the revenue that comes from the customers who use Kong Mesh, which is based on the
Yeah.
Kuma CNCF incubating project that Kong is actively contributing to. And yeah, so without going into the details, yeah, it was a really great year for just simply because if you think about this, like why it was a great year, it was if you think about from the life and from the things that happened in the world, it was not a great year. There's a lot of like uncertainty, like different settling event happened. What is a good thing happened for digital world is that many since it started in 2020 2021 when the businesses start migrating and they understood that digital part of the business is most important. With the lockdowns and all these kind of things, different business organizations they need to think more about how this business will be sustained in a world of lockdown where the people not meeting people. However, there should be still ways how they make some business. For the companies who build tools and systems to support this, again, digital transformation, and you can also cross off this digital transformation from your BS bingo as well. But if you think about this, moving more, creating more services, consumer-oriented services. That was like a big step for many companies who do any type of business in the cloud. There is a very interesting when the people start getting maybe some of the like stimulus money, they were kind of reinvest those money back to economy. They either like buying some stuff on retail or they ordering food from a local store, but they will be using some of the digital platform to allow them to do this, like payments, for example. Payments like touchless payments exploded in the last years. Like you can now, 2 years ago, it was, yeah, it's good if you have like Apple Pay terminal.
Who carries cash anymore, right?
Exactly. Now it's a must. You don't need to even like a telephone, your cell phone, your iPhone or your Android phone is your basically wallet. Like if you go into Subway, if you go into to Tube, and you just tap your phone and that's it. These things help businesses like ours we have like more middleware to run more bytes to run through Kong, help us to grow significantly in 2021 2022. So there's a kind of it's a correlation, not causality, I would say. There's some level of wishful thinking maybe, but this is what is happening. Like this is what happening with traditional businesses. The digital transformation, not some like a fancy word that you use in a business meeting anymore. It is fact that's happened. That's it. So we're already there, and many people don't want to back out from this. Like electronic queues, like if you go to doctor's office, you know most likely will be getting text message when you don't need to sitting there in office. When they're ready, they will just call. You can be, wait outside, or you can wait in your car, and they will be ready. Same thing with the delivery services. That was main reason for many companies who were building digital business to succeed and continue to grow even during pandemic.
So my next question actually is really, really relevant then, based on what you just said, because if there's so much digital transformation going on in the world right now, because I guess it was always coming, but COVID kind of sped that up massively by like maybe 5, 10, maybe even 20 years. So everybody's kind of fighting in the same world. So my next question is, how do you go about ensuring that you had the most widely adopted open source API gateway? Or not even specific to that, but how do you go about making sure you've had a great year like you have in such a competitive world?
So one of the things that we constantly tracking, and we're trying to see if it is like, metrics are hard, depends on what you want to measure and what you want to see. That's you're gonna be depends on what kind of result you want to see. You will be picking up metrics that will confirm this. That's just like a human nature.
Yeah.
Like if you want to see growth of the project, you will try to look at some, I don't know, we call it like a vanity metrics. Like for example, it's open source project. So let's see how many stars we have on GitHub. Like how many people use this. Let's say, and I'm just going there. Let's say I don't remember last time I checked this. So the Kong right now has around like a 32,000 stars on GitHub. So, and I think it's a pretty good number, and showing that it's pretty active and pretty widely used open source project. That's kind of like one of the metrics that we also track. But apart from this, I have my personal metric that I like to. It's kind of like the metric that I use with everything that I do with developers as a developer advocate. I call it like TTK.
Okay.
Time to Kong, meaning that's like how long it take for a particular person to have their Kong gateway up and running. Like, is it like a 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour? And I always like to work to optimize this particular metric. And the things what I do around and the things that we do here with developer relations team and documentation team and developer growth team and developer marketing teams is to optimize this metric. How fast you can start using the tools so you can start solving your problems.
Okay.
That's my kind of like my North Star and the gold standard metric that I use. Different people might use different metric to see the success. Different people might like to see, I don't know, like number of views of this or number of downloads of the things. But like if it's something that easy to measure, not necessarily it's a very easy or right thing to pick up immediately. So that's why I like to pick up something that's a little bit more challenging to measure, but at the end of the day it gives me better understanding that I'm doing my job right or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely get that. My former boss used to say to me, "What gets measured gets done." So
yeah.
And I work in recruitment, so he was talking about how many phone calls I've made, but a little bit different, but same sort of idea.
Yeah.
So the title of our meetup and our event and our chat today is called Supercharge Kubernetes Ingress. So let's move on to that a little bit. And I think it was a week ago, you and I were chatting offline, and we were talking about, like the networking stuff and how Kong fits into Ingress Gateway and kind of an introduction and a concept to networking in Kubernetes. So do you want to just talk to us a little bit about about those things?
Yes, of course. So I assume many listeners of the show, at least familiar with the Kubernetes just as a platform, and it's I hate to say assume, but like hey, here we go. I said it. So essentially, and we're not going to be doing like a full blown kind of drill down to how the Kubernetes does this with network. We will talk about um, the bare minimum that any engineer needs to know to get their apps running. So essentially, whenever you have a application, and in this world, I don't. For me, it's very difficult to find the example of the application that will not be somehow dealing with network. If you're building API system, or you're building a web app, or you're building a web service, or you're building something that someone will be interacting with, you need to be dealing with network. And Kubernetes provides like multiple abstractions without like going into deep of the how the IP tables works, how the routing works, how the DNS works inside Kubernetes. Essentially, you end up with three abstractions or three type of services that you can have. So cluster IP give you kind of IP address that will be addressable inside your Kubernetes cluster. You might even have a kind of like a discovery based on namespace and based on location of your application. That's like the default configuration that you might have. But in order to expose your application, you need to have like something more to outside world, like outside of Kubernetes cluster. Kubernetes provides you multiple ways how you can isolate your workloads. So with the with this, you have basically two options. One option is it's called node port that gives you kind of NAT style of communication. You're exposing your service through IP address of node plus port that will be routed to your application. Your external system will be hitting this port, and after that, Kubernetes will do the magic routing thing. Not very convenient, not super dynamic. So that's why there's third type of the service called load balancer that allows you to have external IP address, and from this external IP address, you need to route your request to your application. And Kubernetes community come up with this concept of that's called Ingress. That essentially it's a load balancer. Implementation can be very, by default they use Nginx. It's kind of like a default implementation of the Ingress controller that will be routing your traffic in and out of Kubernetes cluster. So you're hitting this like my Kubernetes cluster something / my app, and the traffic goes to app. That's essentially how you what you need to think about is about your system. So your application is running inside Kubernetes. You creating some sort of service that allows to be this application accessible inside the cluster, and after that ingress object that will allow to expose this application to outside world. Now, with this ingress, you have very limited set of functionality what you can do. You can do only, for example, like L7 type of workloads. If you have a system that only exposes through L7 protocols like HTTP, HTTPS, in the, like a WebSocket or even gRPC with the HTTP 2.0. And that's it. You have only like routing logic. But what if you want to do something a little bit more? Yes, Ingress provides you the ways how you can configure HTTPS and TLS of your traffic, but like what if you want to do more? What if you want to put some of the authorization logic for your application, like or integrate with some system that provides the OpenID Connect type of functionality. You want to have like a centralized entry point, like through like Okta or some other OIDC provider that's available. So you need to either implement this yourself, built in this piece of functionality inside your application, or because it's infrastructural code, do not mess and mix the infrastructural code together with your application logic. So you need to kind of outsource this to somewhere. And this is where the tools like Gateway comes into play, because it's bread and butter. Now, and this is the responsibility of a vendor of this tool to provide you like Kubernetes native tooling that allow you to kind of don't worry, or if you still worrying, don't worry that much about all these things. Integrate with this landscape. So that's why we developed, and it's also open sourced. It's called Kong Ingress controller. So essentially, you can replace your default ingress with Kong, and you're not gonna be losing anything by replacing with Kong, because Kong is built on top of Nginx. Nginx is the kind of like one of the core functionalities that we run on top of. But also on top of this, we're using this framework called OpenResty that allows us to do all sorts of like cool modifications, like plugins and all this kind of like a traffic shaping things. So you really don't lose, because people have a fear of missing out, saying, hey, okay, so like I used to have an Nginx, but now like I don't have Nginx, and you still have Nginx, and it still runs inside, so you still have like a performance and all these nice things that people love Nginx for. Once you have this, you now moving away from having this ingress that basically dumb, because it's only kind of like a load balancer there that knows how to, route the traffic between the nodes and stuff like that. You can get the, for example, the system that allows to automatic certificate rotation. We integrating with Cert Manager. That's another CNCF project that allows to integrate with the certificate authority and the different providers that provide you with the certificates, so you can traffic into your application will be encrypted and the certificates will be rotated. My favorite implementation is Let's Encrypt, and I personally use this in my all my demos, like whenever I need to do HTTPS. And it's simply, I was doing this not because I'm a huge fan of the security and like I'm super into this, but because my browser will not allow me to hit the service and hey, we're trying to upgrade this request to HTTPS, and now we're seeing this creepy message about the certificate is not available. What the hell? So, and that was super easy for me to implement. I just need to put some annotations. Certificate manager, cert manager was available in my Kubernetes cluster, and the rest of the stuff was just like work as a magic, just because of these integrations was available for me by by developers who develop those. And I can easily implement like a key authorization, username and password authorization integration with, like I said, with tools like Okta, and so some other things. That's pretty cool for operations people, so they can focus on like a business logic, but not focusing on infrastructure. And that's what I call like a supercharged ingress. You start with the standard ingress object, which is standard resource in Kubernetes cluster, putting few annotations that will not affect anything except the controller that will be listening and reading those annotations, and that's it. You will get all this. Plus, you can start collecting metrics. There's a plugin that allows you to integrate with Prometheus and Grafana. You start collecting metrics immediately. How your gateway is doing, like how it serves requests and all this kind of stuff. You can further along integrate this with service mesh and have a traces all the way from when the user hits your gateway endpoint all the way to application. So that will allow you to do root cause analysis in case of failures, in case of different problems, so far and so on.
That's it. That's how you supercharge your ingress.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And um, one of the things that we don't say much or we don't talk much, it's dealing with the systems that not L7 systems. Um, Usually, when the people running stuff in Kubernetes, they say, "Oh yeah, it's just like web service." But there are huge number of systems that need to serve traffic from L4 protocols like TCP, UDP, and all this like much lower protocols. And standard ingress cannot do this. And many vendors were solving this differently, like some of the customizations and some of the custom resources. We used to have, or we still have it, like TCP ingress that allows us to expose TCP service outside world, or like UDP ingress. But community of Kubernetes community, they were not sitting still. They're saying, okay, looks like we have this problem. Looks like many users wants to use this type of stuff, and ingress is not suitable solution for this. So that's why communities start working on something that called Gateway API that substantially extend capabilities of these what we called like ingress controllers before that. Now it's called gateways. And those gateways now have more exposure to what developers are doing, and with community and with this like a collaboration process of the Kubernetes network, especially interest groups, those resources now will be standard. Like there will be HTTP route, there will be TCP route, there will be UDP route. So all these things will become a kind of like a part of the standard implementation. And what was driven by many vendors who implement this kind of supercharged ingress controllers now is becoming a standard. So the Gateway API is the next generation of kind of networking things that will be available for developers when they will be building application and they need to expose this application to outside.
Yeah. Okay. So, Victor, that brings us very nicely around back to the beginning, talking about you and talking about the business. So, where I like to kind of tailor these off is asking, what's next for Kong? We spoke about how you've had a fantastic year last year. You're now coming into a new financial year. So, what do the next 12 months hold for the business?
It's a very good question. So I like to talk about technology, and I will be talking about technology mostly right now, because technology is what we do and that what drives the business. I think the 2022-2023 finally will be year of Linux on desktop. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say.
No, it's not gonna happen. Yes, so we continue to basically meeting developers where they are. One of the like tech challenges we're trying to right now to solve is to provide builds of Kong gateway and the Kong for not only x86 architectures. We see a lot of movement in ARM space, and even cloud providers now providing much cheaper ARM-based instances that allow you to run your workloads with same or even better performance sometime. I think that's the interesting take on where cloud providers and in general like technology might go. It's kind of exploring some other architectures. I've seen some of the talks from companies like, for example, Honeycomb last year. They did a big splash in this community when they said, oh yeah, by the way, we started using Kafka in our like Graviton instances and it works great. So Kafka was, compiled to ARM architectures, and now they run this in the Gravitons. We want to meet our developers where they are and providing them with tools that they can run in whatever platform they want. So that's something that excites me. Like this is something that we on the open source side of things, Kong has the ARM builds, and it runs fantastically on even in the new Mac computers. That's also ARM based, and it can be run on Raspberry Pi, or it can be run in the like a Graviton systems in AWS. The same thing with the tools that we built for applications for like service mesh. Same thing for the service mesh. Like if you build like Edge with Quang, you need to have a similar functionality to be, so your application will be running together in ARM architecture within your cluster. And definitely cloud. We continue to invest in a cloud-based managed control plane that we called Quank Connect, that allows you to have centralized place of configuring your applications, your data planes, and how the people will be, dealing with the. You have one application is running in the cloud, another application running in the bare metal. So how you would configure those, that's what Connect solves for them. There's interesting space that we not yet explored, but many cloud providers explored around like a managed gateways. You know that like AWS has like Apigee, and they're also there's a cloud platform. Cloudflare just recently announced that they also will be going into into managed gateway business. So again, it might sound like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We started building this business before it was cool, and now there's like many players there. Are we moving the kind of like we implementing this future that we want to be, or it's just something that people actually need? The numbers of the business numbers showing that the people actually need this stuff. And I think that's the interesting direction that we might be looking in the future. Again, it's not disclaimer. It's not. It's something that I'm wishing. That's something that I see from the industry. Something that I see that other people doing, and it would be maybe quite natural to do for other companies. And yeah, we will continue to work closely with a cloud native community. There's a lot of interesting projects going on there. One of the exciting things for me also personally, from perspective of like API governance and all the things that's available in API management space, is maybe Open Policy Agent, the framework that allows to build very sophisticated policies of application communication. So you can say provide the different like a traffic permission that will not only allow to particular service to call another service, but rather have a more granular. You can call only on specific, for example, HTTP methods. Like you can lock down some of the service for read only for only certain set of services, where other services might have like a full access, a read and write. So those things can be possible to do with service mesh and OPA integrated together. That's exciting piece of technologies that I hope we will see in the future more and more. There's a lot of interesting things going on, and I'm super excited for 2022, 2023, what will be year of the Linux on desktop. Yep.
Year of the Linux on desktop. Let's hope not, anyway. Well, final question from me, and this is something new that I've introduced today. And it's going to be a theme running through all of my podcasts moving forward, but you're the very first guest that I've asked this to, Victor, so you get to give me the very first answer on this. But as a recruiter, I recruit DevOps engineers, right? So I could have 5 DevOps vacancies. They could all be different. What I would want to know from you is, what's your personal definition of DevOps?
Yeah, very good question. And for me, DevOps is always about it's about the culture. It's about um, how the people interact in the teams. It's about how this interaction is structured, how they communicate developers and operations, how they communicate, and how they would um, implement like certain practices. Tools might come and go. Different, a couple years ago, like a Puppet and Chef were just like the tools that everyone was using. After that, the Ansible came into play, and everyone started using the Ansible. And then after that, like somewhere behind the Kubernetes was growing adoption. So tools are great as long as that there is a proper culture in organization that allows to use the tool, because it's 100% possible to implement like standard developers writing code and throwing over the fence to operation people to support, even with Kubernetes. Is it DevOps? Well, I don't know. It's probably not. It's something else, but definitely is not DevOps. DevOps is the way how they communicate. DevOps is how people iterate over the changes. DevOps is about like automating things and deploying things and observe things at the same time. So you will not use this data to blame someone, but rather define the root cause and quickly provide the fix for this particular problem. So it's a kind of like a not a one sentence combination, but it is my personal definition is you need it's a combination of human skills and technology actually plays a little bit there. You can like implement all these DevOps in shell scripts. That's fine, as long as you have a clear understanding between the teams what they're doing and what is definition of success for the teams, rather than that's my field of responsibility, and I'm not gonna touch anything else. So it is not DevOps. It's a siloed system that is been there for many years. It's about collaboration, about exploration, about fixing the problems together. So that's and like coming up with some of the better architectures and tools. If it makes sense, I don't know. That's kind of how I like to see like ideal, like a perfect world of DevOps.
DevOps is cooperation. I love that. Brilliant. Well, that's a great place to end it. So it's been, I've loved this. It's been a really informative session. So once again, massive thanks to you. I know it's your mid-morning over there.
Thank you for having me here. I'm always glad to talk about the stuff. It's a shame that we cannot meet in person yet, but hopefully sometime soon.
Well, hopefully, if I can get over to New York, that's a good excuse, right?
Exactly, absolutely. It would be fantastic to have you here.
Absolutely. Well, look, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for jumping on. And Taryn, if you're still here, thank you so much for helping to arrange this as well. I hope you both have a great day, and I'll catch up with you offline.
My name is Viktor Gamov, and as always, have a nice day. Take care.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys.
Bye.